Under the harsh fluorescent lights of Atlanta Memorial Hospital, Detective Anya Petrova fights for her life after an airport shootout. Outside the ICU, Max, her loyal Belgian Malinois K-9 partner, senses something wrong about the doctor treating his handler. With razor-sharp instincts and unwavering devotion, Max uncovers a sinister conspiracy far beyond ordinary drug smuggling, threatening not just Anya, but national security. Can Max's extraordinary sense of smell and unconditional love be enough to save the woman who once rescued him from a painful past? Do you believe that sometimes true heroes have four paws and a heart that never quits? Where are you watching this video? Please share and follow the story below so we can spread this warmth to every corner. The harsh fluorescent lights of Atlanta Memorial's intensive care unit hummed with a sterile energy, casting stark, unforgiving shadows across Detective Anya Petrova's ashen face. Outside the observation window, Sergeant Ben Carter watched his K-9 partner, Max, a magnificent Belgian Malinois, press his broad muzzle against the cool glass. Ben felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his stomach. Something was undeniably wrong. Max's amber eyes, usually so full of playful intelligence, were fixed intently on Dr. Elias Thorne, the attending physician currently inside Anya's room. A low, guttural growl rumbled in Max's chest, a sound that Ben, a seasoned K-9 handler, knew better than to ignore. "Easy, boy," he murmured, running a hand down Max's powerful back. But the dog's ears remained rigidly pinned back, his body a taut line of tension. Through the window, Anya lay utterly still amidst a forest of beeping monitors and the slow, steady drip of intravenous fluids. Just 12 hours prior, they had been a formidable team, working their regular shift at the sprawling Atlanta International Airport. Max's exceptionally keen nose, a finely tuned instrument honed by years of rigorous training, had been their most valuable asset, guiding them through the endless labyrinth of bustling terminals and stringent security checkpoints. Then the scent had hit Max, that unmistakable sharp chemical tang that always spelled trouble, a scent that prickled the hairs on the back of Ben's neck as well. Anya had trusted Max's instincts implicitly, a bond forged over 5 intense years of partnership, a silent understanding that transcended words. They had tracked the source of the scent to Terminal C, their pursuit leading them to the precipice of a clandestine drug smuggling operation about to violently unravel. Now Anya was locked in a silent battle for her life, and Max, with his heightened senses, couldn't shake the primal feeling that the danger, the source of that acrid smell, was far from over. Dr. Thorne, a man with a neatly trimmed salt and pepper beard and an air of practiced calm, adjusted something in Anya's IV line. The subtle movement sent another tremor of unease through Max, and his growl deepened, vibrating against the observation window. Ben gently tugged on the sturdy leather leash, but the usually obedient K-9 officer remained rooted to the spot, his gaze unwavering, almost accusatory toward the doctor. There was something disturbingly familiar about Thorne's movements, a fleeting gesture, a particular way he held his hand that triggered a buried memory from the chaotic scene at the airport terminal. Max strained, trying to communicate this fragmented recollection, this instinctive distrust, to his human partner, but Ben could only see a worried dog reacting to his handler's injury. "I know you're worried about her, boy," Ben said softly, kneeling beside Max, his voice thick with emotion. "We all are. Anya's tough. She'll pull through." He offered a reassuring scratch behind Max's ears. "She's in good hands here." The well-intentioned words offered no comfort to Max. All he knew, with a certainty that resonated deep within his canine DNA, was that the same unsettling scent from the airport, chemical, dangerous, undeniably wrong, now emanated faintly from Dr. Thorne's crisp blue scrubs. And each time the doctor entered Anya's room, the monitors displaying her vital signs would inexplicably dip, the rhythmic beeping faltering like a dying heartbeat. A young resident, Dr. Lena Hansen, her face etched with fatigue after a long shift, paused at the bustling nurses' station. Her attention was drawn by Max's unusually agitated behavior. Lena had volunteered with therapy dogs in the pediatric ward during her residency and knew that K-9 officers possessed a different kind of intelligence, their instincts finely tuned by years of intensive training and real-world experience. The way Max tracked Dr. Thorne's every move wasn't mere anxiety or simple separation distress. This was something more profound, something instinctual. "Has he been acting like this with all the medical staff?" she asked Ben, approaching him cautiously, her voice gentle. "No, ma'am. Just started today and only with—" Ben's explanation was abruptly cut short by the sudden, piercing wail of Anya's heart monitor. The high-pitched shriek echoed through the sterile hallway, sending a jolt of fear through everyone present. Through the observation glass, they watched in horror as Dr. Thorne reacted instantly, rushing to Anya's bedside, barking rapid orders at the nurses as her vital signs plummeted alarmingly. Max, his pent-up anxiety reaching a breaking point, lunged forward with a powerful surge, nearly pulling Ben off his feet. His deep, resonant bark echoed through the sterile hallway, a sound so familiar, so intrinsically linked to safety and partnership, that Anya would have recognized it instantly, even in her heavily sedated state. But this wasn't his sharp, excited, alert bark for narcotics or explosives. This was his primal warning, the same low, urgent tone he'd emitted just seconds before the firefight had erupted at the airport, a premonition of imminent danger. Dr. Hansen's brow furrowed as she watched Dr. Thorne frantically adjust Anya's medication drip, his movements now appearing less like practiced efficiency and more like hurried manipulation. "Officer Carter, how long have you known Dr. Thorne?" she asked, her voice laced with a growing suspicion. "Since Anya was admitted last night." "Why?" "Because I have worked in this ICU for 3 years," she said slowly, her gaze never leaving Thorne's back. "And I've never seen him before today." Max's barking intensified, reaching a fever pitch of frantic urgency as Dr. Thorne momentarily glanced through the observation window. For a fleeting, chilling split second, his eyes met Max's. In that brief connection, Ben saw something flicker, a spark of recognition, a flash of fear, and then a chilling undercurrent of pure hatred. Then Thorne was moving with sudden, purposeful speed, his focus shifting from Anya to the far end of the hallway, towards the discreet service elevator used primarily by staff. "Stop him!" Dr. Hansen shouted, her voice sharp with alarm. But Max was already in motion, driven by an instinct more powerful than any command. 5 years of relentless training, countless hours of pursuit and apprehension drills, the unwavering bond with Anya, all of it had been leading to this critical moment. This impostor, this wolf in sheep's clothing, had already hurt his partner once. Max, with the fierce protectiveness ingrained in his breed and amplified by his loyalty to Anya, wouldn't allow him a second chance. The elevator doors were already beginning to close when Max, with a powerful lunge fueled by adrenaline and unwavering devotion, broke free from Ben's grasp. Ben's startled shout and Dr. Hansen's sharp gasp faded behind him as he tore down the polished hallway, his sharp claws clicking against the linoleum floor, a desperate rhythm echoing the frantic beating of his canine heart. He had one chance, one desperate leap of faith, to prevent the catastrophe that his keen senses had been warning him about all along. Anya always said Max was more than just a police dog. He was her guardian angel, a furry, four-legged protector who watched over her with unwavering vigilance. As he launched his powerful body through the narrowing gap of the elevator doors, Max knew one thing with absolute certainty. Guardian angels didn't take coffee breaks, and they sure as hell didn't give up on their partners. The last sounds that reached Ben and Dr. Hansen before the elevator doors slammed shut with a metallic thud were the unmistakable, sickening crunch of Max's powerful jaws meeting their target, followed by a sharp, undeniably human scream of pain and utter surprise. The hunt that had begun amidst the bustling crowds of Atlanta International was about to reach its violent conclusion within the confined space of an elevator at Atlanta Memorial, and this time Max, driven by an unwavering loyalty, wasn't going to let his quarry escape. Anya's life, her very breath, depended on it. Crimson blood, thick and viscous, dripped from the fake doctor's arm, staining the pristine white of his stolen scrubs, as two burly hospital security guards, alerted by Dr. Hansen's frantic call, pinned him roughly against the cold metal wall of the stalled elevator. Max, his teeth still bared in a silent snarl, hadn't released his grip until Ben's commanding voice, laced with relief and authority, echoed through the opening doors. "Release!" Even then, the fiercely protective Belgian Malinois kept his muscled body strategically positioned between the suspect and the elevator exit, his thick fur bristling along his spine, hackles raised, every muscle coiled and ready to strike again at the slightest provocation. "Jesus Christ," breathed one of the security guards, his eyes wide with a mixture of awe and apprehension as he eyed the torn sleeve of the fake Dr. Thorne's scrubs, the fabric shredded where Max's teeth had sunk in. "That dog means business, doesn't he?" Dr. Hansen, her face a mask of grim determination, pushed her way through the small but rapidly gathering crowd of curious onlookers and concerned hospital staff. "Check his ID! Now!" she ordered, her voice leaving no room for argument. She had already placed a frantic call to the real ICU attending physician doctor. Alistair Reed, a seasoned veteran known for his calm demeanor and encyclopedic knowledge, who was currently racing back from his hastily interrupted lunch break in the hospital cafeteria. The man they had known as Dr. Thorne had been alone in Anya's room for nearly an hour, unsupervised, with unrestricted access to her medical charts and her delicate IV line. The security guard, his hands trembling slightly, pulled a worn leather wallet from the suspect's pocket. The identification card inside read, "James Corbin," with an address listing him as an orderly from a completely different hospital across the city. Max's low growl deepened, a rumbling warning that resonated through the tense atmosphere, as Sergeant Carter read the unfamiliar name aloud. "Get a toxicology screen on Detective Petrova's blood, Stat," Dr. Hansen ordered, already turning and sprinting back towards the ICU, her mind racing with the horrifying possibilities. "And lock down her room. No one goes in or out without my direct authorization." Ben, his grip firm on Max's leash, followed her closely, the K-9 officer's rigorous training warring with his primal instincts to stay and guard the captured threat. Anya needed him more. The elevator doors slid shut once more on James Corbin's face, now contorted in a grotesque mixture of pain and something far more sinister, a chilling, calculating anger. He wasn't talking, offering no explanation for his deception, but his eyes, dark and full of malevolence, spoke volumes. This wasn't over. Back in the brightly lit ICU, Anya's room had become a flurry of urgent activity. The real Dr. Alistair Reed, a distinguished man in his late 50s with a kind face and a reassuring presence, his usual attire brightened by a cheerful bow tie, was meticulously reviewing Anya's charts, his brow furrowed with growing concern. "These medication orders," he muttered to Dr. Hansen, his voice tight with disbelief. "They're all wrong. Look at these dosages. This could have been fatal." Max whined softly, a low, almost imperceptible sound, pressing his large head against Ben's leg. The handler recognized that particular sound. It was the same subtle vocalization Max used when he needed to indicate something specific, but couldn't bark or scratch to show a precise location. Dr. Hansen noticed it too, her sharp eyes missing nothing. "What is it, boy?" she asked, kneeling beside him, her voice gentle and encouraging. "What are you trying to tell us?" Max's unwavering gaze was fixed intently on the small stainless steel refrigerator tucked away in the corner of Anya's room. The unit used to store temperature-sensitive medications that required constant refrigeration. Dr. Hansen followed his line of sight, her expression thoughtful, and moved towards it slowly. "Wait," she said, stopping abruptly halfway across the room, a sudden realization dawning in her eyes. "Officer Carter, could you have Max check this area like he would for other substances? Like he would at the airport?" Ben nodded, understanding immediately the subtle shift in Max's behavior and the potential significance of his focus. "Search, Max!" "Find it," he commanded, releasing Max from his formal heel position. The powerful dog moved methodically around the refrigerator, his nose working overtime, sniffing every seam and crevice with focused intensity, before sitting abruptly at the unit's base, his amber eyes fixed on the floor just beneath it. The universal K-9 signal, target located. When a maintenance worker, quickly summoned by Dr. Hansen, carefully removed the refrigerator's bottom panel, they discovered a small, discreet package securely taped to the compressor unit. Inside were several small glass vials filled with a clear, viscous liquid, unmarked except for a small, crudely drawn symbol that sent a wave of cold dread through Ben. The same distinctive tattoo they had glimpsed on the forearm of one of the fleeing drug runners at Atlanta International, just moments before the chaotic firefight had erupted. "Son of a bitch," Ben whispered, his hand instinctively reaching for his phone. "This goes way beyond a random attack. They followed her here. They knew exactly where she'd be taken." Dr. Hansen was already meticulously documenting everything with her phone's camera, capturing every detail of the package and its contents, while the real Dr. Reed worked swiftly and efficiently to stabilize Anya's dangerously altered medication lines. "The question is," Dr. Hansen said, her gaze shifting to Max, who remained in an alert posture, his senses still on high alert, "how many more of them are there? And what exactly did Detective Petrova stumble onto at that airport that made her such a threat?" Ben added, his mind racing, trying to piece together the fragmented clues. Max's ears twitched almost imperceptibly at a faint sound in the hallway. The distinct rhythm of footsteps moving too quickly, too purposefully for regular hospital staff. A fleeting shadow passed across the frosted glass window of the door, and Max's powerful muscles tensed imperceptibly beneath his fur. The hospital staff had changed shifts during the earlier chaos, and not everyone's identity had been thoroughly verified in the confusion. Through the large window of the ICU, the Atlanta sunset painted the western sky in dramatic hues of fiery red and soft gold, a stark contrast to the sterile tension within the room. Somewhere out in that sprawling city, Anya's discovery at the airport was undoubtedly setting larger, more dangerous wheels in motion. But here in room 412, her faithful partner settled into a vigilant guard position, his amber eyes fixed intently on the door, a silent promise of protection. The night shift was just beginning, and Max had already learned one crucial lesson in his years of service. In a hospital this size, a sprawling complex of interconnected buildings and countless rooms, there were 1,000 places to hide and 1,000 ways to disappear without a trace. But they would have to get through him first, and Max, loyal to his core, never truly slept on watch. His vigilance was a constant, a silent shield against the unseen threats that lurked in the shadows. The midnight shift at Atlanta Memorial Hospital stretched out with agonizing slowness, each minute feeling like an eternity. Max hadn't moved from his steadfast post by Anya's bedside, his large frame a silent sentinel in the dimly lit room, even after Dr. Hansen had managed to convince the understandably hesitant hospital security to allow him to remain. As the various medical machines beeped and whirred steadily in the oppressive darkness, a rhythmic symphony of Anya's precarious life, Max's mind drifted back to the pivotal day that had irrevocably changed everything, the day that Detective Anya Petrova had become so much more than just another handler to him. 3 years ago, the sprawling, high-fenced grounds of the Atlanta K-9 training facility had felt like Max's own personal hell. After being brutally rescued from the clutches of a clandestine illegal dog-fighting ring, where his natural aggression had been cruelly exploited, he had been deemed too volatile, too untrusting of humans for traditional service. Experienced trainers, their faces grim, had walked past his kennel without a second glance, their official clipboards marked with damning red X's next to his identification number. He was considered a lost cause, a casualty of a brutal and inhumane world. But Anya had been different. She hadn't seen a broken, aggressive animal. She had seen a scared one. She had sat patiently outside his chain-link kennel for hours on end, her voice a soothing balm in the sterile environment, reading aloud from thick case files as if he were already her trusted partner, sharing the intricacies of her work, her voice a low murmur against the backdrop of the kennel's barking chorus. "You're not mean," she had said one particularly rainy afternoon, her hand gently pressing against the cold, wet chain link, her eyes filled with an unwavering empathy that resonated deep within Max's battered spirit. "You're just scared, and scared isn't the same as broken." Max vividly remembered the first time she had brought him a complex puzzle box filled with high-value training treats. Other handlers had relied on simple, immediate food rewards. Anya, however, challenged him to think, to problem solve, to engage his sharp mind. "Bad guys don't play fair," she had told him, her gaze steady as she watched him meticulously work out the intricate locking mechanism with his nose and paws. "We need to be smarter, faster, and trust each other completely if we want to bring them down." A sudden, faint noise in the otherwise silent hallway snapped Max back to the stark reality of the present. His ears instantly pricked forward, swiveling independently to pinpoint the source of the sound. But it was just a tired-looking orderly quietly wheeling a medication cart down the corridor, the wheels squeaking softly on the polished floor. Every member of the night staff had been subjected to a rigorous triple check of their identification and credentials after the unsettling incident with the fake doctor. But Max, his senses heightened by the lingering threat, wasn't taking any chances. Not after the deadly events that had unfolded at the airport. His mind wandered again, this time to their very first real bust together, a pivotal moment that had solidified their bond. They had been tracking a slippery suspect through the echoing, dust-filled corridors of an abandoned office building when, without warning, a section of the rotting floor had suddenly given way beneath Anya's feet. She had fallen with a sickening thud, disappearing into the darkness below. Max, in that terrifying instant, had completely disregarded every carefully ingrained training protocol, breaking instantly from his designated position to the edge of the gaping hole. Without hesitation, he had instinctively grabbed the sturdy tactical vest around Anya's chest with his powerful teeth, holding her precariously suspended until backup, alerted by his frantic barking, had finally arrived. The department, adhering strictly to protocol, had initially wanted to discipline Anya for not maintaining proper K-9 control during the incident. But Anya had stood her ground, her voice firm and unwavering. "My dog, my rules," she had declared defiantly. "He made a judgment call. He assessed the situation and reacted to save my life. I'm alive today because he thinks for himself." A low rumble of thunder echoed outside the large hospital windows, and Max felt his muscles instinctively tense. Storms always had a way of taking him back to that fateful night 6 months ago. The night when everything had begun to subtly unravel, the first faint cracks appearing in the seemingly solid foundation of their world. They had been working late, the silence of the precinct broken only by the rhythmic tapping of Anya's fingers on her keyboard as she meticulously reviewed old cold cases, while Max dozed peacefully under her desk, his presence a comforting weight against her feet. The particular file she had been engrossed in that night had initially seemed unremarkable. A routine drug smuggling operation from 5 years prior, a closed case gathering dust in the archives. But something within those seemingly innocuous papers, a subtle detail, a name, a date, had made Anya's heart suddenly race. Max, with his acute sensitivity to her emotional state, had smelled her fear, a faint, almost imperceptible shift in her scent, even before she had consciously registered the growing unease herself. She had made 3 phone calls that night, each one etched into Max's memory by the subtle changes in her demeanor. The first call had been to her direct supervisor, Chief Richard Harrison. It had gone straight to voicemail. The second call had been to an unlisted number, a sequence of digits that Max had somehow memorized by the almost imperceptible tremor in Anya's fingers as she had dialed. The third call had never gone through. Her hand had hovered over the phone, her brow furrowed in thought. That was when they had first noticed the sleek, black SUV idling across the street from her apartment building as they had driven home, its tinted windows obscuring the occupants within, a silent, ominous presence in their usually quiet neighborhood. A soft, almost imperceptible moan from the hospital bed beside him suddenly jerked Max back to full attention. Anya's fingers twitched slightly, and for a fleeting moment, her eyelids fluttered open, revealing a hint of the familiar, steely blue of her eyes before closing again. Max whined softly, a low, hopeful sound, gently nudging her hand with his wet nose. The doctors had cautiously reduced her sedation, hoping she would gradually wake up naturally, but they had warned that the process could be slow, unpredictable. "She's fighting," Dr. Hansen said quietly from the doorway, her voice soft with a mixture of hope and exhaustion, startling Max, who hadn't heard her approach. He was undeniably getting tired, his senses dulled by the long hours of unwavering vigilance. "Just like you fought, didn't you? When everyone else had given up on you." Max watched as the young doctor meticulously checked Anya's vital signs on the array of monitors. In the dim, ambient light of the ICU, he could see the dark circles under her eyes, a testament to the countless hours she had spent at the hospital. She hadn't left either, working well past the end of her scheduled shifts to personally monitor Anya's progress, her dedication mirroring his own unwavering commitment. She reminded him so much of his partner, the same quiet determination, the same fierce refusal to accept things at face value, the same unwavering commitment to justice. "I pulled her records," Dr. Hansen continued, her voice barely above a whisper, more to herself than to Max, as she scanned the notes on her tablet. 5 years with the department, highest arrest record in the entire K-9 unit, not just for drug busts, but for everything. She paused, her gaze thoughtful. But it's the small things that stand out. The glowing notes from her initial handler about her exceptional ability to rehabilitate an aggressive dog. The subtle complaints filed against her by Chief Harrison over the years for excessive investigation of seemingly routine cases, for insubordination when she pushed for further inquiries. She looked down at Max, her expression understanding. "You two weren't just doing your jobs, were you?" she murmured. "You were looking for something specific, something that got her shot." A sudden flash of lightning illuminated the room in a stark, brilliant white, momentarily banishing the shadows. For a fleeting instant, Max saw another flash, a vivid, horrifying image imprinted on his memory. The orange flare of muzzle fire in the dimly lit airport terminal, Anya's body crumpling to the ground, the acrid metallic smell of gunpowder mingling with the sickeningly familiar chemical scent of betrayal. The same unsettling smell that had clung faintly to the fake doctor's stolen clothes. Anya's fingers twitched again, and this time, they curled weakly around Max's muzzle, her touch fragile but undeniably present. Her breathing changed, becoming shallower but slightly faster, a faint, fluttering sound as she fought her way back from the deep darkness that had held her captive for the past 2 agonizing days. Dr. Hansen reacted instantly, her movement swift and professional as she rushed to check the dilation of Anya's pupils, her brow furrowed with intense concentration. "Detective Petrova? Anya, can you hear me?" she asked, her voice firm but gentle, willing her patient back to consciousness. Max knew that look of fierce determination that flickered across Anya's pale face, a spark of the indomitable spirit he had witnessed countless times before, the same unwavering resolve he had seen the day she had stubbornly refused to give up on an angry, frightened dog that everyone else had written off as irredeemable. She was coming back to him, fighting her way through the fog of sedation and pain. And when she did, Max knew with absolute certainty they would finish what they had started at the airport. Because Anya had taught him more than just the standard commands and protocols of police work. She had taught him the true meaning of loyalty, the unwavering power of trust, and that some battles were worth any risk, any sacrifice. Most importantly, she had taught him that the most dangerous enemies weren't always the ones who bared their teeth and roared. They were often the ones who smiled sweetly while subtly reaching for the knife. Another powerful round of thunder shook the hospital windows, the glass panes rattling in their frames. Somewhere out in the sprawling darkness of Atlanta, the people who had so ruthlessly tried to silence his partner, to extinguish her light, were undoubtedly realizing with growing panic that their carefully laid plans had failed. They would be coming again, Max knew, their methods evolving, their disguises more elaborate, their tricks more insidious, desperate to finally silence the truth that Anya had uncovered. But they didn't know what Max knew, what he felt in the deepest fibers of his being, that the bond between him and Anya was stronger than any fear, that their trust in each other could overcome any training, and that some partnerships went soul deep, a connection forged in shared danger and unwavering loyalty. Anya had saved him once, giving him purpose and love when he had lost all hope. Now it was his turn to return that gift, to stand as her shield, her protector, until the very end. The pale pre-dawn light began to filter through the large windows of Atlanta Memorial's dimly lit security office as Dr. Hansen, her eyes red-rimmed with fatigue, reviewed the grainy security footage for what felt like the 10th time that night. The impostor, James Corbin, had visited Anya's room exactly 4 times before Max had so dramatically exposed him, each visit meticulously timed between the hospital's shift changes, each lasting precisely 3 minutes. "There," Sergeant Carter said, leaning forward and pointing at the flickering image on the monitor. "See how he checks the hallway both ways before entering her room? That's not standard hospital protocol. That's tactical awareness. Someone trained in covert operations." Max lay quietly at their feet in the cramped security office, his ears constantly twitching, alert to every subtle sound emanating from the quiet corridor outside. The remainder of the night had passed without further incident, but the underlying tension in his powerful muscles told a different story, a silent testament to his unwavering vigilance. Anya had drifted back into unconsciousness after her brief moment of awareness, but thankfully, her vital signs had finally begun to stabilize, offering a fragile glimmer of hope. "Wait! Freeze that frame." Dr. Hansen leaned even closer to the monitor, her gaze fixed on a particular moment in the footage. The image showed Corbin standing at the nurse's station, seemingly checking patient charts, a clipboard held casually in his hand. But his other hand moved with a swift, almost imperceptible motion, briefly touching the underside of the counter. "Can you zoom in on that?" she asked the bored-looking security officer manning the controls. With a few clicks of the mouse, the security officer enhanced the image. There, barely visible, was a small, circular black disc discreetly stuck beneath the edge of the counter. Ben swore softly under his breath, a wave of anger washing over him. "That's a wireless transmitter." He was monitoring the entire floor, listening to everything. Max's head snapped up instantly at the sound of approaching footsteps in the hallway, his body going rigid with renewed alertness. Detective Lisa Martinez from the Atlanta Police Department entered the security office, her badge glinting dully under the harsh fluorescent lights. "We got Corbin's prints back," she announced without preamble, her tone all business. "He's got a military background, special ops medic, honorably discharged 4 years ago. Been completely off the grid since." "Special ops?" Dr. Hansen frowned, her mind struggling to reconcile the level of training with a seemingly simple drug bust for a routine drug smuggling operation? About that, Detective Martinez dropped a thick manila file onto the cluttered desk with a heavy thud. Your partner's last case wasn't just about drugs, Officer Carter. She looked directly at Ben, her expression serious. Detective Petrova and Max had stumbled onto something much bigger at the airport. Way bigger. The detective spread out several glossy photographs across the desk. They showed detailed cargo manifests, intricate flight plans, and meticulously compiled staff schedules. Your K-9 unit wasn't just sniffing out the occasional drug mule carrying personal amounts. They were exposing a sophisticated, highly organized pipeline. She tapped a finger on one of the manifests. Military-grade pharmaceuticals, far exceeding typical civilian needs, being smuggled out of the country through commercial flights, modified in clandestine underground labs, then shipped back in through different channels disguised as high-end designer drugs. Max growled softly at the photographs, a low rumble of recognition deep in his chest, the same unsettling chemical scent that had first alerted him and Anya to the fatal confrontation in Terminal C, emanating faintly from the images. The real kicker, Martinez continued, her voice grim, the manifest that Detective Petrova flagged, the ones that initially raised her suspicions, all traced back to a single private military contractor. The same one Corbin worked for, Ben finished, the pieces of the puzzle clicking into place with a chilling clarity. They've had lucrative government contracts for years, providing medical supplies and logistical support to conflict zones all over the globe. And using those same established routes, the same trusted channels, to smuggle their illegal drugs, Ben concluded, his voice tight with anger, hiding their illicit activities in plain sight, under the guise of legitimate business. A sudden commotion in the hallway outside the security office abruptly interrupted their grim discussion. Max was on his feet instantly, his thick fur bristling along his back, hackles raised in a clear sign of alarm. Through the small window of the security office door, they watched as a group of men in identical dark suits, their faces impassive and their movements coordinated, approached the nurses' station, flanked by two nervous-looking hospital administrators who seemed out of their depth. "Federal agents," Detective Martinez muttered, her eyes narrowing with suspicion. "Somebody's trying to contain this, to control the narrative." Just then, Dr. Hansen's pager buzzed urgently. A code blew in Anya's room. Her heart monitor was showing dangerously erratic irregularities, but Max wasn't moving toward the door leading to the ICU. Instead, his focus was elsewhere. He was slowly backing away, positioning himself strategically between Ben and Dr. Hansen and the ventilation grate located in the far corner of the security office. The acrid, bitter chemical scent hit them a moment later, faint but undeniably present. The same unsettling odor that had permeated the airport and clung to Corbin. "Gas!" Ben shouted, his hand instinctively reaching for his weapon. But Max was already in motion, his reaction lightning fast. He leaped with surprising agility at the nearest fire alarm pull station, his powerful jaws clamping down on the bright red plastic cover with a sharp crack. The piercing shriek of the fire alarm immediately filled the air, its insistent wail mixing with the sudden, subtle hiss emanating from the ventilation vents. Emergency protocols kicked in instantly. Heavy fire doors slammed shut throughout the hospital wing, sealing off sections of the building as the ventilation system automatically reversed its airflow, forcefully sucking the contaminated air out of the building. In the ensuing chaos of the rapid evacuation, with staff and patients being rushed out of the affected areas, no one seemed to notice the group of men in dark suits discreetly slipping away from the nurses' station or the unmarked black vans speeding away from the hospital's parking lot, disappearing into the morning traffic. Hours later, in a secure private wing of Atlanta General Hospital, located across town and far from the compromised Atlanta Memorial, Detective Anya Petrova finally opened her eyes. The room was unfamiliar, the view from the window different, but the comforting weight of Max's large head resting gently on her bed was exactly where it should be. "Hey, partner," she whispered, her voice hoarse and weak after days of unconsciousness. Max's tail thumped a soft, reassuring rhythm against the crisp white sheets as Dr. Hansen, her face lighting up with relief, rushed to her bedside to check her vital signs. Sergeant Carter stepped into Anya's line of sight, his expression a mixture of relief and grim determination. "Did we get them?" Anya asked, her voice barely audible. "Not all of them," Ben replied, his gaze steady. "Not yet. But thanks to Max, we've got enough evidence. Enough solid leads to blow this whole thing wide open." "The FBI's real task force is involved now," Dr. Hansen added, smiling reassuringly. "The legitimate one, not those imposters from this morning." Anya's weak hand found Max's soft ear, gently scratching that special spot just behind his jaw that always made his amber eyes close in contentment. "Good boy," she murmured, her voice filled with affection. I knew you'd figure it out." But Max, ever vigilant, kept one ear perked, one eye slightly open, his senses still on high alert. The game, he instinctively knew, wasn't truly over. The people behind this vast conspiracy had connections everywhere, resources they hadn't even begun to fully uncover yet. And Anya, having come so close to exposing their entire operation, was still a dangerous loose end. Outside the new heavily guarded hospital room, Detective Martinez was coordinating with a team of genuine federal agents, their radios crackling with updates and urgent communications. The news of the massive pharmaceutical smuggling ring, the corrupted military contractors, and the compromised airport security was beginning to break across every news channel, sending shockwaves through the city and beyond. Yet as the sun began to set on another long Atlanta evening, casting long shadows across the city skyline, Max knew that the real battle, the one to ensure Anya's continued safety and bring all those responsible to justice, was just beginning. Because somewhere in the sprawling city below, in a very exclusive, high-rise office, a phone was ringing, and on the other end of that line, someone was very, very angry that Detective Anya Petrova was still alive. They had tried to silence her with bullets. They had tried to silence her with poison. They had failed. Max settled into his protective guard position beside Anya's bed, his amber eyes fixed intently on the single door to the room. Let them try again, he thought, his resolve hardening. This time, he would be ready. The low hum of the emergency generators beneath Atlanta General Hospital filled the sudden silence as the city's power grid inexplicably went dark. One by one, entire blocks of the sprawling metropolis disappeared into the inky blackness of the night, the blackout spreading like spilled ink across the illuminated skyline. Max's ears pricked up at the distant, mournful wail of approaching sirens, their sound amplified by the unnatural quiet. "This is no coincidence," Anya said from her hospital bed, her voice noticeably stronger now after 3 days of slow but steady recovery. She had insisted on keeping the lights off in her room, preferring to let their eyes adjust to the pervasive darkness, a tactical advantage she had learned over years of undercover work. "They're making their move." Dr. Hansen, her brow furrowed with concern, quickly checked the backup systems controlling Anya's vital signs monitors. "Security's been doubled on this entire floor, and we've got genuine FBI agents stationed at every—" She stopped abruptly, her words cut short as Max suddenly stood up from his position beside Anya's bed, his nose working the air, his powerful body tense. The Belgian Malinois moved silently toward the door, his subtle but unmistakable body language setting off every alarm bell in Anya's trained mind. This wasn't his usual alert posture for general danger. This was something different, something specific. Recognition. "Max!" Anya started to push herself up in the bed, but Sergeant Carter gently pressed her back down. "Stay down," he whispered, his hand instinctively moving to the holster of his service weapon. "What is it, boy?" The answer came in a chilling cascade of failures. First, the low hum of the backup generators stuttered and died, plunging the room into near total silence. Then the faint but distinct click of the electronic locks on the secure ward doors echoed from the hallway. Finally, the soft glow of the computers at the nurse's station flickered and went dark, taking the feed from the security cameras with them. "Well," a familiar, chillingly casual voice drawled from the doorway. "Isn't this cozy?" Chief Richard Harrison of the Atlanta Police Department stepped into the dimly lit room, his polished badge catching what little ambient light remained from the hallway. Behind him, two hulking men in full tactical gear, their faces obscured by masks, silently secured the hallway. The man Anya had trusted as her direct supervisor, her mentor for the past 5 years, the man who had seemingly guided her career, looked different now, his features sharp and cold, his eyes calculating and devoid of any warmth. "You should have stayed unconscious, Petrova," he said, his voice devoid of emotion as he casually closed the door behind him. "Would have been much easier for everyone that way." Max's low growl was pure, unadulterated thunder, a sound that promised violence. But he held his position, his powerful muscles coiled and ready, patiently waiting for Anya's command. She had taught him that. Patience, discipline, and unwavering focus, even in the face of betrayal. "How long?" Anya asked, her voice surprisingly steady despite the shock, her hand inching slowly, deliberately, towards the nurse call button on the side of her bed. "How long have you been helping them move their product through my airport?" Harrison's laugh was a dry, humorless sound, like bitter coffee and old regrets. "Your airport? That's always been your problem, Petrova." He took a step closer, his eyes narrowing. "Too proprietary about your territory. Too many questions about cargo manifests that weren't any of your damn concern. Those drugs are killing people," Anya shot back, her voice rising with righteous anger despite her weakened state. "Kids are dying from whatever toxic cocktail your military friends are cooking up in those underground labs." "It's bigger than just drugs, Anya," Harrison said, his hand disappearing inside his jacket, presumably reaching for his weapon. "The pharmaceuticals, they're just the packaging, the convenient cover." "What's inside?" Anya pressed, her heart pounding in her chest. He smiled, and it was all teeth, a predatory grin that sent a shiver down her spine. "Well, that's what your four-legged friend kept sniffing out, wasn't it?" He gestured dismissively towards Max. "Something new, something that shouldn't exist yet." Max's powerful muscles bunched beneath his fur, his heightened senses reading Anya's subtle hand signal, a barely perceptible twitch of her fingers. Years of intense partnership had forged a silent language between them, a communication that transcended spoken words. "Biological weapons," Anya said, the final pieces of the horrifying puzzle clicking into place in her mind. "Hidden within legitimate medical supplies. That's why you needed such unrestricted airport access. Military contractors smuggling in the components, piece by piece," Ben added, his voice grim. "Give the lady a prize," Harrison said with a mocking tone, finally drawing a sleek, silenced pistol from his jacket. "And now it's time for—" He never finished the sentence. Max launched himself with explosive force at Harrison's gun arm just as Anya yanked the thin hospital curtains closed, plunging the room into absolute, disorienting darkness. The chief's shot went wildly astray, shattering the window with a loud crash. The chaos that erupted was a symphony of guttural snarls, muffled shouts, and the sounds of desperate struggle. Sergeant Carter tackled one of the tactical officers, their bodies hitting the floor with a heavy thud, while Dr. Hansen, thinking quickly, fumbled for and hit the emergency lockdown override button on the wall, sealing the entire secure ward. Anya rolled swiftly off the hospital bed, ignoring the sharp pain that shot through her healing wounds as she hit the cold floor. In the darkness, Max was a force of nature, a whirlwind of fur and teeth. Anya had trained him to fight smart, not just hard, to use his instincts and intelligence to his advantage. He didn't go for a direct, obvious attack. Instead, he caught the fabric of Harrison's sleeve in his powerful jaws, using his weight and momentum to drag the surprised chief off balance. Harrison's head collided with the sharp edge of a nearby medical supply cart with a sickening crack. But Harrison's men were professionals, highly trained and ruthless. One of them managed to get a tight chokehold around Max's neck from behind, the thick, tactical armor protecting him from the dog's sharp teeth. Anya saw the glint of a knife in the dim light filtering from the hallway. "Max! Fenrir!" she screamed, using their special, rarely used command word, a code phrase she had created just for him, inspired by the fearsome wolf of Norse mythology and a nod to his brutal past in the fighting ring. The effect was instantaneous. Max went momentarily limp, feigning submission for a split second, causing his attacker to slightly loosen his grip. Then, with a powerful surge of adrenaline, he exploded back into motion, using the man's own arm as a springboard to launch himself at Harrison, who was struggling to regain his footing. The chief's backup weapon, a smaller pistol tucked into his waistband, clattered across the linoleum floor, spinning to a stop at Anya's outstretched feet. She didn't hesitate. Scrambling to pick it up, she pointed it towards the remaining tactical officer. "Freeze!" Her voice, though still weak, cracked like a whip in the tense darkness. "Max, hold!" Max's powerful jaws remained locked onto Harrison's shoulder, his teeth not breaking the skin, but his grip firm and unwavering, a clear promise of far worse if the chief dared to move. The tactical team, seeing their leader effectively neutralized, froze in place, their weapons still raised but their resolve faltering. The sound of rapidly approaching footsteps echoed from the hallway, and the cavalry arrived moments later, Detective Martinez leading a joint FBI-ATF task force that had been strategically positioned around the hospital, anticipating exactly this kind of desperate play. As Harrison, his face contorted in pain and fury, was roughly cuffed and led away by the federal agents, he spat venomous words at Anya that made Max's hackles rise once more. "You have no idea what you started, Petrova," he snarled, his eyes burning with hatred. "There are people above me, people far above all of us. They'll never let this see the light of day." Anya, leaning heavily against Ben, reached down and scratched Max behind his ears, earning a low rumbling purr of contentment. "Maybe," she said, her gaze fixed on her former boss as he disappeared into the custody of the federal agents. "But they've never had to deal with a partner like mine." Hours later, as the city's power gradually flickered back to life, one block at a time, Anya sat propped up on her hospital bed, Max's large head resting comfortably in her lap. Dr. Hansen was gently treating the few minor scratches he had sustained during the chaotic fight. But his unwavering amber eyes never left Anya's face, a silent testament to his devotion. "You know what this means," Detective Martinez said from the doorway, her expression serious. "We'll need you both to testify. This is going to go all the way to the top. There's going to be pressure, immense pressure, from places we can't even imagine." Anya smiled, feeling the steady warmth of Max's body pressed against her side. "Let them come," she said softly, her voice filled with a quiet confidence. "We're ready?" Because that's what Richard Harrison had never truly understood. Max wasn't just a highly trained dog following commands. He was a survivor, a fighter who had learned to overcome impossible odds, his loyalty forged in the crucible of shared danger. And Anya, she was the one person who had seen past his scars, both visible and invisible, to the courageous hero underneath. Together, they were more than just a K-9 unit. They were a promise kept, a trust unbroken, a bond of love and loyalty that no amount of corruption or intimidation could ever touch. And in their fight for justice, they were only just getting started. The soft morning sun painted the Atlanta skyline in optimistic shades of gold and rose as Detective Anya Petrova, looking pale but resolute, stood before the solemn faces of the federal grand jury. 2 weeks had passed since the dramatic showdown at the hospital, and the intricate web of corruption they had painstakingly uncovered was finally beginning to unravel, its threads leading to the highest echelons of power. Max sat perfectly still beside her witness chair, his imposing presence a source of quiet comfort and unwavering support as she calmly detailed the shocking extent of the conspiracy they had exposed. "It started with a scent," Anya explained to the assembled jury, her voice clear and steady despite the weight of her testimony. "Max detected something highly unusual during a routine cargo inspection at Atlanta International Airport. A faint but distinct chemical odor that didn't match any known drug profiles in our extensive database. The evidence presented was damning, a meticulously compiled collection of documents, intercepted communications, and forensic analysis. Chief Harrison's swift arrest had triggered a cascading domino effect, exposing a vast and deeply entrenched network that stretched from the seemingly innocuous cargo bays of Atlanta International Airport to shadowy military contractors operating across 3 continents. The modified pharmaceuticals they were smuggling weren't simply high-end designer drugs, as they had initially suspected. They were in fact dangerous prototypes for something far more sinister, far more globally threatening. They were using legitimate medical supply routes, exploiting established channels of trust in humanitarian aid, to covertly test and transport highly potent biological weapons. FBI Special Agent Catherine Walsh, a sharp, no-nonsense woman who had taken over the investigation, confirmed to the jury, standing beside a large display board showcasing seized documentation and incriminating evidence. Detective Petrova and Max didn't just disrupt a major drug operation. Their actions, their keen instincts, and unwavering dedication prevented a potential global catastrophe. Back at Atlanta Memorial Hospital, a sense of cautious optimism permeated the atmosphere. Dr. Lena Hansen, now hailed as a local hero for her quick thinking and decisive actions, was implementing revolutionary changes to hospital security protocols. The hospital board, deeply shaken by the near-fatal incident, had unanimously approved her comprehensive proposal for an enhanced K-9 security program, with Detective Petrova and Max serving as invaluable special advisors, lending their unique expertise to the development of new training methods and security measures. The days of vulnerable medical facilities, easily exploited by those with malicious intent, were finally coming to an end. "Your partner's incredible instincts saved more than just your life, Anya," Dr. Hansen told her during a training session with a new cohort of K-9 units. They watched with admiration as Max, his tail wagging proudly, expertly demonstrated advanced detection techniques to a group of eager hospital security dogs and their handlers. "He showed us that sometimes the most significant medical breakthrough isn't a new drug or a cutting-edge technology. It's a wet nose and a willing heart." The federal investigation expanded rapidly, its tendrils reaching into every corner of the conspiracy. Detective Martinez's dedicated task force, working tirelessly with the FBI and ATF, uncovered similar clandestine operations at major airports across the country, revealing a disturbing pattern of corruption and exploitation. One by one, the compromised officials and complicit contractors were being identified, arrested, and brought to justice. But Anya, her experiences having taught her the insidious nature of such deep-rooted corruption, knew that the fight for true justice was far from over. "They'll try again," she said during a confidential briefing with the FBI's Bioweapons Division, her voice firm with conviction. "Different airports, different methods, different disguises, but they will undoubtedly try to re-establish their operation." Max's ears perked up at the serious tone in her voice, his senses immediately on alert. He had been officially awarded the police department's prestigious Medal of Valor for his heroic actions, a gleaming medal that now hung proudly from his collar during official ceremonies. But the loyal Belgian Malinois seemed even more proud of his new state-of-the-art specialized tactical vest. Personally designed by Dr. Hansen, featuring enhanced body armor and integrated, highly sensitive detection sensors. "Let them try," Agent Walsh replied, her gaze steady as she watched Max work with the newest class of K-9 recruits, his movements fluid and precise. Thanks to you two, we know exactly what to look for now, the subtle indicators, the telltale signs. Every major airport in the country is currently implementing your revised security protocols, Detective Petrova. The impact of Anya and Max's courageous actions was visible everywhere. Hospital security across the nation had been revolutionized, with highly trained K-9 units becoming a standard presence at major medical facilities, providing an invaluable layer of protection. Airport screening procedures were fundamentally transformed, with a renewed focus on the subtle, non-traditional indicators that Max had first detected, leading to the interception of other potential threats. Detective Anya Petrova and her exceptionally loyal partner had sparked a significant paradigm shift in how America approached the critical task of protecting its most vulnerable points of entry and vital institutions. Late one evening, as the city lights began to twinkle on, Anya sat in her favorite spot on the hospital's rooftop garden, a peaceful sanctuary filled with fragrant flowers and soothing greenery that Dr. Hansen had thoughtfully created for both staff and patients seeking respite. Max lay quietly at her feet, his body relaxed but his senses still subtly attuned to his surroundings, ever vigilant. The sprawling cityscape of Atlanta stretched out before them, its countless lights resembling a vast constellation of stars that had fallen to Earth. "You know what, partner?" Anya said softly, reaching down to scratch behind Max's ears, earning a contented sigh and a gentle thump of his tail against the paving stones. "Sometimes, the biggest heroes are the ones who never stop believing in what they smell." Max's tail thumped again, a steady, reassuring beat. He might not fully understand the official commendations, the numerous press conferences, or the sweeping policy changes that his actions had inspired, but he instinctively understood what truly mattered. His beloved partner was safe, their city was safer, and there would always be more bad guys out there who needed to be caught. A door leading to the garden opened quietly behind them, and Max's head turned sharply, his body momentarily tensing before relaxing as he recognized the familiar scent of Dr. Hansen. She appeared carrying 2 steaming mugs of coffee and, more importantly in Max's opinion, a small bag filled with his favorite high-value training treats. "The FBI called again today," she said, settling down on a nearby bench beside them. "They're officially expanding the K-9 program nationwide." She smiled, her eyes reflecting the city lights. "Every major hospital and airport across the country will soon have a dedicated K-9 unit trained in your methods, Anya." Anya smiled, watching a commercial airliner take off from nearby Atlanta International Airport, its bright navigation lights blinking against the darkening sky. "Hear that, Max?" she murmured, gently stroking his fur. "You're starting a revolution." Max simply nestled closer to his partner, his head resting comfortably on her lap, his keen eyes scanning the horizon. He didn't need to understand the complexities of revolutions or the concept of legacies. He only needed to know that wherever Anya went, whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, a united front against the darkness. Because that's what true partners always did. And somewhere in the sprawling city below, in the vast network of warehouses and transportation hubs, a large cargo plane was just beginning its descent, its hold filled with a new shipment of mysterious crates that would undoubtedly require careful inspection. Max's ears pricked up almost imperceptibly at Anya's slight shift in posture, a subtle change in her breathing, a familiar spark of determination in her eyes. He knew that tone, that almost imperceptible shift in her energy. It was time to go back to work. Some heroes wear capes, others wear badges. The very best ones wear fur and follow their noses straight into the pages of history.